Hi, welcome to James Miller Lifeology, where you learn to simplify and transform your spirit, mind, and body. My name is James Miller. I'm a licensed psychotherapist and a composer. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Let's get started. I wanted to take just a quick moment to thank you all who continually support and listen to James Miller Lifeology. I have been so blessed and honored by your continual support. I wanted to make sure that you don't miss out on anything exciting that's happening over here. So make sure you sign up for my free newsletter at jamesmillerlifeology.com. I have a great show for you today. I'm going to help you embrace every single part of yourself. I'll also be interviewing Devina Kaur, who lives life to its fullest. Devina is known as a sexy goddess who shares her relentless optimism with the world and empowers herself and others in loving themselves unconditionally. For more information about Devina, please visit sexybrilliant.com. I have some exciting news. Did you know that I'm on the radio 3 times a week? You may hear me on the same station on Tuesdays at 1:30 p.m., Fridays at 9:30 a.m., and Saturdays at 12:30 p.m. You may also hear me anytime on iHeartRadio as well as on all the other major podcasting platforms, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and many others. Simply search for the show name, James Miller Lifeology. Are you struggling today to find your purpose? Has mediocrity set in and you can't imagine doing the same thing for the rest of your life? Are your relationships struggling or you aren't sure how to make long-lasting changes in your life? Then today, contact me, James Miller. I will help you recognize the areas in your life that are going really well, and then we'll look at the areas in which you are struggling. We will create actionable solutions to help you create long-lasting changes in your life. You don't have to do this alone. Go to my website, jamesmillerlifeology.com, and click on the page, Work with James. Fill out the form, and it will be sent directly to me. Don't let another day go by without finding your way. Your change can start today. Once again, go to my website, jamesmillerlifeology.com, and click on the page, Work with James. Fill out that form to get started today. Embracing the full you. We have all stood in front of a mirror before, and we can see what we really like about ourselves and the things we don't like about ourselves. Unfortunately, many times we only focus on those things that we think are not attractive. If only I had more of this or less of that. And that defines our worth. That defines who we are or how we think other people see us. We all like to present and project our life a certain way, only cherry pick the things that we really appreciate about ourselves. But you think of the yin and the yang of things, in other words, the opposites. In order for us to be incredibly successful, we have to go through some type of failure, or we have to go through the dark periods. You can't always be on the mountaintop, because in doing that, after time, that will be mediocre to you. So you have to go through some valleys in order to get to the next mountaintop. So how do you embrace the full part of you? Well, think of it this way. Our life is like a jigsaw puzzle. Every piece of our life, in other words, our personality, situations we put ourselves in, or perhaps things that other people have done to us, all links together to create who you are today. But think about your personality. What would other people say about you? People who really love and care about you. What attributes would they assign to you? Are you loving? Are you kind? Are you sexy? Are you benevolent? Are you generous? Are you loyal? Are you honest? The list would go on and on. So when you think of it from that respect, who you are today is because of everything you've experienced. It has taken me years to be able to say, James, I love you. You are an amazing person. And I don't say that with any arrogance. I say that because I've embraced every part of who I am. From the things I've put myself through or things that other people have done to me, I love who I am today. So when loving myself, I choose to accept all of who I am. So some of you may say, well, James, I don't like who I am today. What would need to change? When we often think about experiences we've had, we allow those situations to define who we are. For example, my spouse left me. I must not have any worth. Therefore, I'm too ugly. I wasn't this or I wasn't that, and that's why they left. Or I lost my job, or I don't know how to handle my finances. Or you came down with an illness, and now all of a sudden that illness defines who you are. When you allow situations to define your worth or your value, unfortunately, when you look in that mirror, that is what you call yourself. You're unworthy. You have no value. And those, my friends, are lies. The situations we've experienced, once again, thinking of it like a jigsaw puzzle, all links together to create the person you are today. Sometimes when we isolate an event, we think, I have no idea how this is going to fit in my life. The truth is, you may not know for a while, but with time comes perspective. When a closed door happens, and think of it like an isolated jigsaw puzzle piece, it doesn't make sense. When somebody leaves you, when you lose your job, when you come down with an illness, when something traumatic happens, it does not make sense. And by no means am I minimizing your experience, but I want us to find that perspective. Whatever the lesson was that came out of that experience allows you to look at how that next event led to the next event and the next event. And pretty soon, it's who you are today. In order for a person to be whole, it has to have those puzzle pieces that just don't make sense. When you take a step back and look at your life, all of those pieces create the depth of your life. It gives contrast to the beautiful, colorful pieces in your life. And that, my friend, is you. You are an amazing, wonderful person. But in order to embrace who you are today, you have to embrace those situations in the past. It doesn't mean you accept what's happened to you. You just accept the facts as they are, and what do you do with them? So it's important not to allow an event to define who you are. You define who you are.
Did you know I have a YouTube channel? That's actually how Lifeology started. I have well over 155 episodes that I've created specifically for you. I do know that many people struggle with listening to a full 30-minute show. So these episodes are about 3 minutes long. Each episode will give you a practical tool or technique that you can practice daily to help you simplify and transform your spirit, mind, and body. Simply go to my website, jamesmillerlifeology.com, or go to YouTube and search for my name, James Miller Lifeology. My guest today is Devina Kaur, who's living life to its fullest. Devina is known as a sexy goddess who shares her relentless optimism with the world and empowers herself and others in loving themselves unconditionally. Welcome to my show, Devina.
Hi, thank you so much.
I am really looking forward to this. This is going to be a great interview. I love your brand. I love the self-love that you teach everybody. So this is going to be an awesome time to get to know you.
Absolutely.
So let's hear a little bit more about you. I love to get people's origin stories before we jump into their message. You are not actually from Canada. From where were you born?
I'm born and raised in rural India.
Really?
Very traditional family. My parents had an arranged marriage, and then something similar happened to me. Traditional marriage, and I moved
Traditional
to Canada.
Arranged marriage, you mean?
Yes, an arrangement, and then my marriage fell apart because I was not being honest and authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so now, just to go back, so my culture is very, very traditional, very conservative,
Mm-hmm.
where, the gender roles are very, the woman's the homemaker and the male is the provider, which creates a lot of pressure on our men. And of course, a lot of pressure. Yeah. Can you imagine where, the man is constantly meant to provide, but what happens if you lose your job?
Sure.
Do you lose your value? Do you lose your self-esteem because you're not making money temporarily,
Mm-hmm.
or, whatever it is? So, and of course, the women are homemakers, but now the roles are changing too, right? Where the women are homemakers, but we're also going out and working.
Yes.
So, we're going through this situation where we want to fit in, we want to do our best, and we're still struggling.
Mm-hmm. I actually had this a couple years ago. I had someone on my show who was from India. She was calling from India, and her story was very similar to yours in a lot of ways, where her father wanted a son, but had a daughter. And she was at the top of her class. I mean, brilliant lady. And he just walked away and had wanted nothing to do with her. And so since he left, her mother was ostracized as the divorced woman. And then she was just really made fun of. And so she found her learning and education and became this incredibly successful woman. And then she gives back to her community as well. So it is very interesting to hear about archaic, and I use that word very respectfully, archaic cultures who have those gender roles that it's hard for people to become who they are. And so I'm so glad that you were able to find who you are, and in all cultures you are teaching people how to find to fully embrace themselves.
Absolutely. And for me, I grew up being I was being told I'm too fat, too loud, too ambitious, and then to say that actually that loudness is also me, and
that is your voice. Yes.
Yeah, that's my voice. I'm the change maker, and here I am running this movement called Sexy Brilliant.
Yes.
So very different from the labeling that I grew up with, where my value is my size, is based on how worthy I am of love. So coming back to this era where we're talking about acceptance. We're talking about acceptance of people of all sizes, all genders, all ethnic backgrounds. But and you can never, nobody can ever be too fat, too loud, too ambitious.
Yes. Yes, that is very true. And I think that's the problem with society in general is there's so many labels. You can't, anyone that's outside of the norm is considered an outlier. They get made fun of, they get ostracized. But they don't talk about the people who are in second place. They only talk about people who are in the very front. And so it's important for us to remember that as the people who are change makers, as the people who are, quote, too loud, too ambitious, of course they're going to talk about us because they don't talk about the people who are in the second, third, fourth, fifth, or just even in the middle part of the race.
Yes, and it takes a lot of courage to say, you know what, I'm going to stay true to my purpose.
Mm-hmm.
In my case, my purpose is sexy, brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
And it came across through a lot of hard work, a lot of heartbreak, a lot of being different. You know, I used to be an investment banker. I came to Canada to go to university, then I went into the banking industry. And one day I'm at the office and I'm like, I am so miserable in my job.
Mm-hmm.
I'm making so much money, but I hate myself. I hate my life, and I just want to kill myself. So this was the thought that went through me, and I was like, you know, do I want to actually end up killing myself, or do I want to do something different? So that night I came back home and, you know, I went into meditation, which is also like inner work,
Yes,
right?
it is,
Inner
yeah.
self-knowledge, getting out of our own way. So I said, you know what? So the next day I went and I gave my resignation. I had no idea what I was going to do.
That's scary. Yeah, it's very scary.
Yes, but it's only through the darkness that we find light.
Yes.
So I quit that and I actually accidentally fell into dog walking. So for about 4 years of my life, before Sexy Brilliant happened, I used to be a full-time dog walker. So, you know, it didn't matter that I made $10 a day.
Mm-hmm.
I would just be like, I was at a happier place. I was also healthier emotionally, physically. And, you know, but by saying no to the wrong choice, which was for me was banking,
Mm-hmm.
I was able to say yes to more in life.
How do you teach people to differentiate between the healthy and unhealthy choices?
So just to be clear, there is no right choice. There is no wrong choice. Everything will lead, you know, us to where we're meant to go. And very, very important, we are the co-creators of our own destiny.
Yes, we are.
So which means, so it's not just the thought, like, you know, let's say I want to be on the show with James, but I also have to take action to make that happen. So that's what I mean. We are the co-creators of our own destiny.
Well, if you think about it from a movement standpoint, well, if I want to get to point A to point B, I just don't think about it. I can only get there if I actually physically move myself to point A to point B. And people forget that that's the same thing with goals. Goals without a plan, without movement is just simply a wish. And so when people don't realize that I literally have to move my body to go to the next chapter in my life, and people forget about that aspect. And so you can take it from a kind of more of a thought standpoint of, yes, my thought here to there is one thing, but in order for that to become action or to become tangible, it has to have physical movement.
Absolutely, and that's what coming back to, you know, wanting to kill myself versus taking the decision to give in my resignation. You know, that's, so again, there's a thought, but you don't actually act on the thought that's perhaps not helpful, and then you do something to change that thought. That's what I mean.
Yes.
By that, you know, we're here to co-create our own life path.
Yes. Tell me about the Sexy Brilliant movement.
So the Sexy Brilliant movement is a global revolution for empowerment from the inside out. And by that, we're all sexy, we're all brilliant.
We are, yes.
Yeah, and sexy is like courage, sexy is daring.
Confidence, yes.
Yes, confidence. And confidence is inner confidence. So the outer confidence is because I'm lacking a word, I'm going to use inauthentic. Whereas the inner confidence is, I'm standing here, it doesn't matter what size I am, doesn't matter what gender I am, doesn't matter, you know, what my labels are, what my past baggage is. I'm standing here, I'm like, I have done so much personal development and inner work that I can say that I am confident, and that comes from inner work. I like to use the word inner wealth.
That is very beautiful.
Yeah.
And what I hear you say is there's an aspect of we redefine what sexy means. We redefine what confidence means. Just like you said, when you remove what society says is that versus I'm going to create a different definition for this and I'm going to embody that definition. And so I think when the concept of too loud, too ambitious, too this, too that, that is what society says. But I think each one of us has to take stock or ownership within ourselves to say, James, what does it mean to be confident? What does it mean to be sexy? What does it mean to be authentic? And when we recreate that, and I get to now determine what that word means, where, the definition of what society may say is completely different, but mine is truly what I believe. And I'm like, I'm going to be that. And that's when we create the metric of success within ourselves, as opposed to the metric of success that society says, because one day we're in, the next day we're out. And when we constantly try and change that, unfortunately, we will never truly find that self-resilience or that peace within ourselves, because we're always chasing a like on Facebook. We're always chasing the latest trends or this or that. And unfortunately, that will always change. We will always feel less than.
Exactly. And, at one point of my life, I used to be homeless. And at that point, I remember asking myself, what is this teaching me? But,
good.
That resilience to say, this is not permanent. I can do better for myself. So it didn't matter that, it didn't matter that life that had happened to me in life, but it was the lesson that I learned from it and how I rose from it. So that's what sexy is. And of course, as we uncover the layers, we shine more in our brilliance.
Yes.
In our own authentic self and unique self, and through which we first empower ourselves, and then we share that with other people around us.
And I love the fact, I didn't even think of the brilliance part. I was thinking of the sexy part. But yeah, the brilliance, I love the metaphor with that, of how that really resonates, of changing the world. And when there's light, there can be no darkness. And in that, when you change the mindsets of people around you with being the sexy, brilliant person that you are, that I am, that the people listening are, there can be no darkness. And so with that, we empower and inspire other people around us to also find their sexy brilliance. And in doing that guy can see why that would create a global movement. Absolutely.
But also, just to come back to, lightness and darkness, one of the things that through a lot of help, I of course, I have coaches, and I work with a psychiatrist and therapist, and I have all the professional help because I am quite eccentric and I need that support.
Sure.
Yeah, and we all do.
We all do.
And
yes, we do.
Yes, and so one of the things that I learned for myself is not to run away from my darkness.
Mm-hmm.
And that darkness is, like last year I was struggling with suicidal thoughts, and I was like, these are thoughts, they're not permanent. So first of all, I reached out to professionals for help, medical professionals and everybody. I'm a full-time single
movement. Uh-huh.
Yes, I'm a full-time single mother, so I also had to take care of, the household. And I said to myself that this is not permanent. Emotions are never right or wrong.
Yes.
They simply exist. So that detachment from that was what helped me no longer run away from my darkness and accept it. And only through that darkness can I teach others about accepting that darkness, loving ourselves through that dark period, so that we can shine in our brilliance and our sexiness.
Well, you think about night and day. Well, in order for the next day to happen, there has to be night. And in that's still, nothing's changed. It's just, can we see or can we not see? And so that is something to consider, that the landscape hasn't changed. What simply has changed is the light. Is the sun there? Is the moon there? So the point is, when you think of it in that respect, what has really changed? And we're going through those dark times in our life. From a logical standpoint, nothing has changed other than what we perceive or what we think we perceive to be true. It's really an interesting concept, because in my field, we have what's called emotional forecasting. Emotional forecasting is you take a snapshot of your life right this second and you project it into the future and say, this is how my life is always going to be. But when you use the concept of night and day, if you take a snapshot of night and think that it's always going to be nighttime, then unfortunately, your future will look pretty dark, will look pretty bleak. But when you realize, if I make a snapshot now and I keep doing that, then I'm limiting myself. So the concept, just like you did as well, is a thought is simply a thought unless I make it a belief, unless I have it become intrinsic of who I am, and then it changes, have a complete paradigm shift or mind shift, and then all of a sudden It's now what I truly believe. So we can remember that, just like you said, to be mindful of how you're feeling right now in an unhealthy way. If we forecast that to tomorrow or the next day or a year from now, we're limiting ourselves from forgetting that a situation is just simply a situation. With a little bit of light, which is perspective, gives us a different outcome in how to look at the situation.
Detachment, professional help, very important.
Yes.
Listening to James.
Well, there's that. Thank you. I'm just kidding.
And of course, and also laughing. One of my messages, the
Yes.
Sexy Brilliant message, is about laughing and taking life lightly.
Yes.
One of my personal daily goals is laugh 100 times a day.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. In fact, I see a lot of the pictures I see of you on social media. It looks like you're a very happy person, and I can see that joy resonates in you. It doesn't mean that you don't have your dark times. We all have that. But you can see that joy emanates in you, that it resonates in you, and I think that's a beautiful thing, Devina.
And for your listeners and my listeners, thank you for being here. Just remember one thing: happiness is not good for the economy.
Yeah, you're right. Let's get ready to look at it. Lots of drugs, many things would go out of business, and we're always happy.
Yeah, but the more happy we get, we're gonna need less things and people and events to depend on. So we can actually take control of our life by choosing to say, I'm gonna laugh, 100 times a day or 10 times a day or whatever that goal is. And to say that I want to get to being sexy and brilliant and being shining in my uniqueness and my light.
Yes. And what I really like about hearing you say that as well is if I start my day saying I'm going to laugh 100 times today, well, that means I need to look for opportunities to laugh. If I'm not intentionally looking for something, I'm not going to see it, and I'm not going to make my goal. So I really like how you set your intention for the day, whatever that goal may be, because then you have to look for opportunities to be able to accomplish that goal. And I think sometimes as humans, we just are too busy when we wake up, or we don't set some time aside in the morning for our spirituality or just for really setting the intention of the day. So I love how you do that. And I think that's a great lesson, great takeaway for my listeners as well.
Absolutely. And you know what? Yesterday I actually did a YouTube video because I had this struggle with finances. And I'm like, if I'm going through this, we all go through this, right? Money is an emotional, adds a lot of fear in our life. So I actually, shared a video and I was very vulnerable where I said, this is happening to me right now. And it's incredible the number of views and the hits.
That's wonderful.
And being in business and being a single mother, we all have that stress. And James, you understand that too, right?
Of course I do. Yes. It's funny. We could be the most famous person on social media, but yet be the poorest person on our bank account. I'm not saying that's you or I, but my point is that life, how we perceive people, we don't see the full spectrum. So your vulnerability really allows people. And in fact, there's a couple things I saw on Twitter as well of some things you were going through. And I think that's a beautiful message that you're very relatable. You allow people to see the truth, to see the real authentic you. And that goes back to because you're sexy and brilliant. And in that really teaches people to be able to be that way as well. Because if we are always, in my field, if I always present as I'm at the top of my game all the time, well, that's just not true. But I'm no different than anybody else. But when you allow people to truly see the full spectrum of who you are, that's when they truly can embrace your message, my message, and even their own life of how to move beyond where they were into something that they can become.
Absolutely. And each of us has the potential to shine in our own unique light and our own gifts. We have to know ourselves and then practice radical self-acceptance.
Yes, radical acceptance.
Yes.
That's right. I can tell you've talked to a couple of people before, a couple of counselors. I know that's a great term. Devina, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on my show today. I can't believe our timer's already up. If my listeners would like to find out more information about you, all the amazing things you're doing, follow you on social media, where would they find this information online?
So the website is www.sexy, SEXY, and then same word, brilliant, BRIALLIANT. Did I spell that right?
Yeah, it's probably good. I sometimes spell lifeology wrong, so you're good.
So sexy, brilliant. brilliant.com.
That's hysterical. See, there you go. You've already got there's a couple of your 100 laughs right there. So that's amazing.
And for our listeners too, right?
Yes, exactly. And that's a great thing about this show is we don't take ourselves seriously at all. So Devina Kaur, thank you so much for being a fantastic guest on my show today. I really do appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, James. And thanks, everybody.
I also want to thank you, the listener, for tuning in today. Please subscribe to this radio show through whichever portal you joined with us today, or please go to my website where you may sign up for my free newsletter, watch my YouTube episodes, read the articles I've written specifically for you, or you may enroll in the Lifeology Academy where you can take self-directed courses which will help you simplify and transform your spirit, mind, and body. If you'd like to personally work with me, be a guest on, or advertise on this show, simply visit jamesmillerlifeology.com. Be sure to follow me on all social media platforms under the name James Miller Lifeology, except for Twitter, which is James M. Lifeology. Once again, thank you so much for your support, and I'll talk to you soon.
AM/FM 247, the best in talk and music all day and every day.